In this video, we're going to apply some of the new techniques that you've learned, as the French seam and also the buttonholes. And we're also going to learn how to make a casing to put a drawstring through. A drawstring bag is a very simple bag that you can use to maybe take your library books back home, to put your sports shoes in, or maybe put in your delicates as you're traveling. All you need is a long rectangular piece of fabric. The length really depends on how big you want your bag to be, the same with the width. So I want a wider bag that is not as long. So the finished bag will be as long as this, but we're also going to turn under a little bit for the casing. There will also be a little bit taken off on the side seams. So I'm quite happy with that shape. But just envision how you want it to end looking like before you cut. The first thing we're going to do is add a couple of buttonholes. We need those buttonholes to thread the drawstring through. In order to mark it, what I want to do is just take my fabric and fold it in half lengthwise. Use your iron to create a crease line. This is only temporarily. Then decide how big you want your casing to be. For example, for the casing, I'm going to turn under about a centimetre or centimetre and a half of fabric. So I'm pressing that into place. And I want a casing that's big enough to accommodate my string. So I'm quite happy with this size at the moment. Once you've ironed this into shape, you have a good idea of where you want your button holes to be. You've got the crease here to tell you this is the middle of the fabric, so you want buttonholes on either side. You also know that the casing is about this wide. So on your right side, you don't want your buttonholes to be longer than this. So I'm going to put a pin in, just where that casing would end. Open this up because you don't want to put a buttonhole through the casing. We only iron this for marking. It gives us a quicker idea than having to measure it and draw it all on. So having the middle here, I want my buttonholes maybe about half a centimetre to a centimetre from the middle. Mark it with tailor's chalk. This will be on the right side of your fabric, so you do want to make sure that you're using something that can rub off. Tailor's chalk comes in different colours, the most common being blue, yellow, red and white. And you obviously would use a contrasting colour to the fabric that you have, so you can see it. So I've already put my buttonhole foot on. And I want to place the fabric underneath. Now my machine starts with the buttonhole going backwards. Yours might start with the buttonhole going forward, so just be aware of which direction it's going to go. Put it into buttonhole mode. For me, I'm choosing stitch 17, which is a round buttonhole, and start stitching. Cut your threads and move over to the other side of the center line to stitch your second buttonhole. sometimes it's a little bit hard to see where the buttonhole actually starts or ends. So what I do is I will go and just put a pin in there and make sure that my needle starts around the same position. Being a drawstring bag, of course, you don't have to be that precise because it is an item that you're just going to use. But if you wanted to have something that where you wanted precision, I would definitely make sure that it would start at the same spot. And depending on the size of your ribbon, you might choose to have a larger or a smaller buttonhole. You just want to have enough width and length that you can thread your ribbon through easily. These are the buttonholes for now. Yeah. And it's easier to open them before you sew the rest of the bag because you have a flat area. You might remember how we did it. We put our unpicker in and moved it along, stopping at the pin. So I can thread my drawstring through here. Now the ironing, we just did the creases, so we got an idea of where we want to position the buttonholes, but we want to just get rid of them now. Because the next step we're going to take is sewing together the side seams. With the right side of your fabric facing up, take the other short side and fold your fabric over so that your edges align. We're going to sew the side seams first. Now, you have two options. If we start with the right sides together, you can sew a basic seam and finish it with a zigzag or pinking shears, just like we've done before. And then all you have to do is your casing and you're ready. But because we want to do this with a French seam to make it just a little bit nicer on the inside and also a bit sturdier. For French seam, you would start the other way. You would still align the top edges, but instead of the right sides facing each other, you're facing the right sides out. Because, as you know, the French seam is the seam that we sew twice. First with the right sides facing outwards and then with the right sides facing inward. By all means, put a few pins in along the edge and change your foot over to just your standard foot. Also, before you start, you do want to make sure that you're back onto your regular straight stitch and your regular stitch length and width. I want a smaller seam, so at the moment I'm aligning the edge of the fabric with the edge of my presser foot. Go forward, back stitch all the way to the end. And keep sewing until you get to the bottom of the seam. Then flip it over so you can sew the other side. Making sure you're smoothing this out so your fabric lies flat and your edges are aligned. Okay, I'm happy with that, so I can start sewing now. Again, I'm aligning the edge of the fabric with the edge of the presser foot. And I start with a couple of stitches forward, back stitching to the end, and sewing along the seam. Again, when you're at the end, back stitch. Now you need to turn your bag inside out and sew it again. If you wanted to have quite a small seam allowance or seam in the inside of the French seam, you could go and trim this very close like we've done before, and then sew with the edge of your presser foot again. However, I'm going to just turn this inside out and give it a good press with my chopstick. So I'm turning the seam inside out, so my good sides are facing each other and my wrong sides are facing outwards. Using your chopstick, just poke out the corners again and scrape along your seam to make it lie flat. Give your seam a press. Okay, the same on the other side. Poke your corners, scrape along the seam. And give it an iron.